Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited about today's session, which is part of our For Members and By Members series. What makes this series so special is that these sessions come directly from the heart of our What School Could Be community. Our members are sharing their really hard-earned insights and experiences that they are passionate about, with the hopes of sparking some meaningful engagement and conversation with everyone. So tonight, we're fortunate to have not one, but three guest facilitators, Marcano, Erin O'Reilly, and Nick Salmon. Each of them brings this huge wealth of knowledge and unique perspective. You can find all of their incredible bios in the event post on our community platform. So if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and take a look at those when you have a chance to do it. So Erin, Nick, welcome, and I'm gonna leave it to you to introduce yourselves a little bit more completely and then get us started.
Well, wonderful, Mel. And we really are excited to have this time with you and everyone here on the screen tonight, as well as the wider community who might hear this another day. This work represents things that we have been doing together for more than 5 years. And as a way of introducing co-writers here, and they'll expand on their bios. I have been a facility planner and PBL coach for almost 10 years or so, well, more in some realms. And along the way, I met Erin when we both lived in Missoula, Montana. And Erin is now completing her doctorate in education and has been a really important piece of this team of writing because of that perspective that she brought as a doctoral student researcher. And Mara and I met more than 5 years ago at the Revolution Education Congress in Chia, Colombia, outside of Bogota. And it was actually that meeting that prompted the, hey, let's follow through and write this book together. And ever since, we've been on that journey. And Mar has been an educator in Spain as well as in Colombia, and has traveled much of the world along the way, also seeking out innovations in education. And that's my quick summary of who we all are, but I hope that you'll hear both Mar and Erin's voices and they'll expand upon things. So Mar, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I think that we could get started. Yeah, I mean, the basics are there because I think that we have so many experiences, like every single person in the room. I'm sure that we all have our experiences. But yeah, as an educator at heart, yeah, for many, many years, I had the opportunity to teach and guide, guide learners from 3 to 18 years old, and to educators, adults, educators, professors. So it's been a long journey. And nowadays, since a few years ago, I started as a teacher's trainer and consultant, and I'm really loving it. It's just, this curiosity towards innovation in education and transformation, and how you can do it better, and how that transformation can move forward thanks to the power of teams. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I am really thankful that I had the opportunity to co-write this book together with Nick, together with Erin. And here we are.
Yeah.
Erin.
Yeah.
Just...
Yeah. I mean, much of the same. I have been a teacher educator at the University of Montana for quite some time now, so since 2016. And before that, I was a high school teacher, a social studies teacher, and really getting to, I guess, yeah, innovate would be the word, but getting to work with our teachers in their pre-service years and really getting to kind of shape those formative years, how they view education and how they view their own practice, and then getting to do the research into that teaming aspect and really looking at inclusive practices that we can really enhance for ourselves, and then how that might play a role in persistence and resilience and self-efficacy and those things that we know that are important to keep us in the profession in whatever capacity that is. So this book has just allowed for me to continue that with two fabulous colleagues and so many more people that we've been able to collaborate with along the way. So yeah.
Mara, I'm wondering if maybe you could open the slide deck, because some of you have been conscious of the film that Ted Dintersmith funded just recently. And there was a preview of that just about a month ago. And when I watched that film, and then all three of us watched it, the Teaching in Teams film not only captures the essence of what we've been working on for 5.5 years, but it included people that I and my partner Kavita Tana have worked with. So the very first voice that you hear, Mike's voice, is a school leader in Mesa, Arizona, that we were working with 3 years ago in the pandemic. And in fact, the facility that he's working in, that was very much designed to support teachers working in teams, was a school that I helped in the educational visioning process with SPS architects in Arizona. So it was an affirmation of all the work that we had been doing all of these years, and then supplemented by all those voices in the film. And so when we began to think about today, we said, well, it's interesting because our book is really kind of the companion guide to this film. And we hope that you'll watch the film many times. I think I've watched it 3 times. I'll keep watching it and recommending other people watch it. But in that conversation a month ago, there were people kind of asking for, well, what do we do with all of this? How do we actually take the next step? And so the timing of our book is a beautiful coincidence that we think it will be a helpful guide to people as they engage in new ways of working with their peers.
Yeah.
And I think the next slide is the overview. I can't remember.
Well, actually,
Yeah. You
we
got
kind
it,
of
Mara.
wanted to
Or
get
you got it,
engaged.
Erin.
We kind of wanted to engage with everybody just here tonight, thinking about your own reflections on teamwork, right? And so as you're kind of thinking about this, your own experiences in teams and with teamwork, and just kind of sharing those stories that maybe come to mind right away. If you wanted to put it in the chat or just kind of jump into the conversation. But we'd love to hear just experiences, the good, the mediocre, whatever those experiences might be.
I can jump in really quickly. Many years ago, I was able to team teach with another colleague that was on my grade level. We tried it for 1 year, and it worked so well that we actually proposed that we'd have an open classroom. So we went to our principal, and the wall in between our 2 classrooms was not a load-bearing wall. And so she supported us fully. She had been in the classrooms and observed and taken part in, that first year that we worked together. And so she was fully on board, and she actually literally knocked down the wall for us, which I think is just this really great metaphor too, right? So it was a really, really beautiful experience, probably one of the best years, teaching that I've ever had. And we continued to team teach until she retired several years after that. So it was wonderful.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Same, I'll jump in. I had the good fortune of team teaching for about 8 years, and definitely same, best teaching years of my life. I think I have never worked harder than when I worked with somebody else, but we just built on each other's ideas and couldn't stop. And we got great feedback from parents and kids. It was project-based American history, American literature. And then a new principal came in and said, this is too hard to schedule around, and poof, it was gone, and that was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
is such a
absolutely.
great, yeah, it's the best.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I love that. And Emily, you shared high school special education teacher. Yes. And you have the opportunity to actually get to co-teach with fellow special education teachers, which is wonderful.
Yeah, from my perspective, I haven't taught in teen teaching because I started teaching many years ago, and unfortunately that wasn't a part of it. It also wasn't part of the infrastructure to allow it. But
Mm.
gradually we became a consultant working, coaching with staff and realising the importance of team teaching and working as a team, and then became a principal. And we opened a brand new school, and that was the key, that it was about team teaching and working in teams. And we started with teams of pairs and of teams, and then a third teacher would come in to support with literacy and numeracy. But it was challenging, and this is a primary based, and I think primary or elementary educators are possibly more apt of doing that and used to doing that. They've been very good at planning together, very good at, we've done lots of planning, we all planned, but it's about that co-teaching. And we had to do a lot of work, and one about interpersonal skills and trust and relationships is a really important part. And then how do you teach? Does one sit back and the other do the work and those things? So what's the different operating models and how we work with the groups, and it's not the equal numbers. So lots of things like that. And working continually over a number of years, had to be working through that. And then do we break up teams or not teams? That's another really interesting thing. Now in my new role, the last 5 years, I've been working with new schools and developing and building new schools. So I've come in on the infrastructure side, and my role now is basically is the education a leader for education best practices and learning environments. And it's been really terrific. And we've been mainly working with high schools, but my job has really been more about the functionality, working with architects, but it's then getting them educators in and then working as teams. We're building places to work as teams, and they're finding it hard. And so our department now is hopefully getting another person in our education side to work side by side for high school people and how we do that. And I was really impressed with the documentary, because we've seen obviously, high tech high, most like to succeed, which is fantastic. And then to see this again. And so we're building a new high school, and we've got to make sure now again we don't go back to the single cells. We don't want big open spaces. We want closed and open and flexible. But how do we get people to teach in teams, and especially secondary? So that's especially why I've come onto this group, and it was great to see that video.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And that resonates so much with me. I work with secondary teachers mostly. And so it really is there are grade levels and certain content that definitely it's just more inherent, or it's just kind of built into, right? A little bit more infrastructure for those teachers to be able to do it. But secondary, it's tough. So I think it's just really inspiring to hear what everyone's doing. And I think that it resonates again with us, right? Because these are the stories highlighted in, teaching in teams, and your stories here that really sparked that interest and the efforts into writing this book, because we wanted to provide people with those tangible ways to really transform their teams. How do you do it from, the very beginning to the transformational pieces, and then keeping that practice going? And we know you got to be able to experience it, right? That's one thing. And then having that support and that infrastructure to continue to do it.
The infrastructure, but then also that I think it was mentioned before, timetabling. That's a
Yeah,
real key
absolutely.
in secondary. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shall we continue then?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think that's actually a great segue to what you just shared there, Erin, about how we structured the book. And so we just thought we would give you a brief overview. What we haven't included, because you can see chapters 1 through 7, is the introduction, which is really the why, the how, and the what of this. And for those of you that have been experienced educators, and reflecting back on your early practices, some of you had the benefit of working with more seasoned partners, and some were forced to work alone. And we have many seasoned educators walking away, saying the profession has become too stressful. And we have young people who are eager to come in, but don't feel very supported and are often leaving the profession in a very short time period. And so at the essence of this book is to say, how can we help educators grow into their own potential and to the collective potential of their team? And that's how we've essentially structured the book. So we start with getting started, and we found a few foundational pieces, which is that you have to build trust, and you have to build a common sense of purpose, and tap into everyone's passions. So there's some kind of foundational things that we cover in the first chapter. Then we get into the essence of forming a team, and we'll share a little bit of a tool that we've developed as a part of that. And it comes down to what are the skills the team needs, and where is each person in achieving those different kinds of skills. And then using that assessment both for your own practice as well as what a team needs. That's the second chapter. And then the third one is about the size and type of teams. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the value of even a team of one, and then to very large groups as well. And then all the different kinds of structural models of teams. It was mentioned, is one person the lead and the other person supportive? Are they actively co-teaching? Are you teaching in a larger team that requires a lot of different roles, that type of thing? So those are kind of the foundational pieces of the first half of the book. And then I believe that Erin is going to pick up the next two pieces of it.
We move into chapter 4 that really focuses on those teamwork strategies. So those strategies that really look at the positive team growth, flowing with challenges when they present themselves, and they inevitably do, and then that decision-making process. So making sure that you have tools implemented and at your disposal to be able to make those decisions in effective ways. And then that chapter 5 really gets into teams and learning and methodologies. And we really look at agile learning as well as project-based learning, and then thinking-based learning. So that's really how we kind of shape those methodologies with really those frameworks that can really help you to engage in that teaming.
Okay, and then to continue, of course, it's not only about forming a team or getting those strategies, but teaming can go to another level when we work on teams of teams, and how we can transform a whole school, by working with teams, not only in the classroom, but beyond the classrooms, between the classrooms, outside the walls of the classrooms. And of course, that transformation can even go even farther. And we talk about transformation at the larger level. Why not at the district level? So what happens, when we're at the community level? So we share this idea and concept of how teams of teams can work at a larger scale, not only at a small one, right? And we offer strategies also. We discuss how we can sustain the transformation through some cultures of teaming, and we do that as well, thinking or based and building upon cultures of thinking, the cultures of thinking work from Ron Richard, from researcher at Harvard University, and we wanted to embed that because it was like, okay, how could that transformation, take place if we focus on those 8 forces and we build upon them, placing, those teams, just putting them, at play as well. And finally, we couldn't end our book without a call to action. Of course, it's not about us sharing in the book. So you'll see that the book is also, I mean, has little spaces, some spaces for you to think, to reflect, and to make your thinking and experiences visible there. So you can use a book as well as a journal, a live journal, okay, that allows you to think on your own and to also to have discussions with your own teams, yeah. And we would like to call to action to everyone, to every single reader, to go teamed, yeah. And that's what we are encouraging by sharing this collective work that we've been working on for so many years. And I'd like to end that with a quote, if I may share just a sec. And the quote says, "We become agents of transformation when we develop awareness. We engage in advocacy and ultimately take action." That's a quote from Kavita Tana from Catalyst Learning Labs. And this is one of the many voices that we also are sharing in our book, because we wanted our book to be something else rather than just, our voices, Nick's voice, Erin's voice, my voice put together. But we also interviewed many different people from all over the world. That was our aim, to introduce some of the voices. So we think that it's your turn to share your story, maybe. That's a call to action. So write your story, go team, and let's make a better world together. Once at that, maybe we want to continue thinking a little bit more, okay, we want to go team. So how can we do it? Where can we start? So let's do a simple exercise. Erin, would you like to lead it, please?
I'd love to. So we want you to think about skills, right? So when thinking about teams and just thinking about what your teams have needed or need to be successful, what are those skills that you think of right away? Just kind of off the top of your head.
I'm going to throw out problem solving right
Yes,
away.
absolutely.
Listening.
Listening. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Active
just saying
listening.
active listening.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
And shared airtime.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. That equity of voice. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that space to hear and listen and take that step back or step forward. Yeah.
I think being open to others' ideas. It's, I think, so easy as a teacher. You've been in a silo for so long that your idea is the best idea, and
Yeah.
not always the case, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's the only idea most of the time. Right.
Yes. It's an ability to reflect and take on critical reflection, critical feedback, and how we
Mhm.
say that. How do we say that to someone else, and how do we ask for that feedback?
Yeah. Yeah. And receive it. Absolutely.
About persistence.
Yeah. It's a big one,
Yeah.
right? Even in the most challenging times, or just, those things that you're, all right, we're feeling a little success, or we are not feeling the success. How do we persist through that part to then kind of catch that momentum, catch those little pieces along the way that help us to get to that next spot?
And we have Emily's contribution here with
Oh, yeah.
collaboration and understanding in the chat.
Absolutely. In so many different ways, right? That collaborative teaming, that collaboration, that open-mindedness, and then also just understanding whether it's a contribution with an idea or the circumstance that your fellow teammate has at that moment, right? And having that understanding in so many different ways, having that capacity to be able to do it. Mhm.
And identifying what skills you actually bring, the individual skills that you bring to make the team. that we're not all the same, but we're all different, but we bring strengths together.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to identify it, being able to embrace it for yourself, right? And acknowledging it and not feeling like, oh man, I don't really want to be that person in the room that's got this, but you do, you bring it. And so, you're able to contribute that and utilizing that with all of the team members. Yeah. I think that's a perfect segue into the next piece of this, just having that expertise, that knowledge, that wisdom, and how you might utilize that in your teams.
So here's one of the exercises that we have early on in the book. And it's a tool that we found helpful for people to look at their own experience and then to be able to, you'll see later here, how this helps a team to have a similar reflection. And all of these ideas took form here in Bozeman, Montana, where the three of us happen to be today. When I was teaching a class where it was the last day of the class that I had this aha moment, and the early ideas of this emerged there. And the idea was that early in a project, early in a career, we have this period of time that we now refer to as accelerating awareness. This is drinking from the fire hose. Everything is coming at you. How do I manage the time and the technology and all these personalities? And how do I take care of my own health and all the rest of that? Every moment is that drinking from the fire hose moment. It's an important piece of the process. It's not a place you want to be forever. It is highly stressful and sometimes. But the second quadrant is that building credibility. That's that day that someone walks up to you and says, Lee, you know how to do this. Can you show me? Or I've noticed that you have been able to manage this parent in this way. Could you help me with this parent that I'm struggling with, whatever it is? But it's that breakthrough moment where somebody sees you in a way that you haven't felt seen before, especially when you're drinking from the fire hose. The third part is hard. It's developing insight. It's slowing the process down enough to give yourself that time to develop that insight. But it's also then the final piece of sharing wisdom to say, well, from that insight, I think I have something to contribute to the rest of the team. So as you might imagine, if we had a team that was all people who were accelerating awareness in all of those skills that you just mentioned, that's going to be a pretty tough team to be on because they don't have people seeing them. They don't have time to develop insight. They have no one to share wisdom with them to help them grow. And similarly, having a team that's all wisdom sharers is, yeah, it would be beautiful, but it would also be a lost opportunity. Inevitably, that wisdom that they have to share could be shared with other people who have other needs in other realms. The last thing I'll say about this is that this is not age-based, that we put all the 20-year-olds in accelerating awareness and we put all the 30-year-olds in building credibility, et cetera. Because when we begin to think of all those skills that you mentioned and some of the other ones that will appear on the next slide, they are not age-based. They're very much experience-based. So we could have a 25-year-old with recent university experience who's had a deep immersion in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so they bring that wisdom to share with their peers. Or there's someone who has a struggle in technology and they could be 20 years old or they could be 50 years old, and so it's not at all an age-based piece. But I think, Mara, the next slide is just an example of how we take this basic way of seeing things. And then we ask each person to say, well, if those are the skills, and so these are ones that commonly come up on the left, am I accelerating awareness? Am I building credibility? Am I developing insight? Or do I have wisdom to share? And so you can do this individually. That's what the different shapes and colors represent. But you can then overlay them together as a team and say, ooh, wow, we all have a need to grow into our capacity of managing time. And nobody on our team has that wisdom to share. we're going to have to grow by reaching out to someone outside of our team. Or in other cases where we have, say, under the project-based learning example, we have some people who would like to grow in that capacity. And it turns out there are people on the team who are already there, and they can help those folks develop. So it's a great way of personalizing our learning as individuals and as a team. No more professional learning experiences that are kind of one size fits all. The team needs certain things, individuals need certain things on that team in order to truly thrive. So that's just one of the tools that we share early in the book, because we think it's a helpful way of thinking differently about a team and what each person is contributing to that team. What you do with it follows in the other chapters as to how we can then leverage that wonderful expertise or those needs for growth within the team. And I don't remember what we're going to do after this. So these are some questions that Mar developed to help us take these ideas forward in your own experience.
Then here we are. We would like to engage you, of course, in thinking about different types of strategies, dynamics, ideas that you may have here about nurturing a team. Yeah, so what strategies have you used, for example, that have worked for you to nurture and to build positive relationships within a team? Or how best can you make decisions as a team? Yeah. Is it Nick who's going to make the decision and we are all going to agree? Or how is that going to work? I don't know. Maybe Lee has a better way, to share, and we could think about that. So how can we do that? Some other strategies that we would like you to think of are those strategies to navigate, to serve, to flow with challenges, and challenges we all know that are part of teamwork. Yeah. You were sharing at the very beginning of the webinar your fantastic, wonderful experiences in teamwork. But I don't know if these are all the experiences you've had, or if you encountered other types of experiences where there were challenges. So we'd like to hear, about these questions, any ideas that you want to share with us, with the rest of the community, the What School Could Be community. So just feel free. Any ideas that may come to your mind?
And Mara, I'm going to throw a challenge, which is that I forgot something that is a helpful contribution here, and I don't want to backtrack too much, but I just want to share that one of the things about using that simple matrix is that when you have a high level of trust within your team, people will be likely to list that they're mostly in the accelerating awareness and building credibility realm. And when you have low levels of trust, people tend to say that they've got wisdom to share in every way. They don't want to ever look like they don't know what they're doing. So they're going to say, I have wisdom to share. So that trust piece is really important. But the other is that when you have that high level of trust, someone who says, I'm still accelerating awareness and time management might actually be contradicted by their teammates to say, oh, no, you've been really helpful in helping me plot out the next 2-week unit or whatever, that type of thing. And so the dynamic of the team grows from that trust, and then allows them to face those challenges that Mara just revealed, because they're open and honest about where they actually are. So sorry for the curveball of forgetting that I wanted to make those points. We'll go back to those 3 questions because they're really great questions, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
No worries. We'll flow with challenges and we'll improvise. No. That's it. So once said that, and I think that was important, Nick, and maybe I can share something else with our audience here today. When we started working on this book, and then Nick presented and shared that tool with us, we were like, let's do it. So what are the skills we we're going to need to co-write a book as a collaborative book. Yeah, we didn't want it to be a coordinated book where Nick wrote his chapters and Erin her chapters and I wrote mine, but we wanted it to be really and truly collaborative. So we were like, okay, so what are the skills we're going to need? And we identified those skills for that particular project, our shared project. And then we went through this tool. We identified, the first, that self-evaluation to see where we thought we were, our first impressions. And then we discuss it with each other. And it was really interesting to see, okay, depending on your context, depending on so many things, you may be thinking, oh, no, I'm still, in accelerating awareness. But then Nick and Erin were like, oh, are you sure, Mark? But you did da. Was like, oh, yeah. So maybe, yeah, I'm, somewhere else. So that's really interesting how the power of teams also, how you can tune, your skills according to the team or the teams you may be in. Yeah, and that's really interesting to share as well. Okay. So we'd love to hear from our audience. Yeah, I think that we've talked a lot for now. Coming back to our strategies, what strategies would you like to would you like to share? Feel free to share, type in the chat, feel free to unmute yourselves. We are already unmute, so it's just a matter of thinking. And I know that thinking time is required, so take your time.
I think every team can be different in how you nurture the team, depending there and who takes responsibility. But as a big team, like as a school team, as in not smaller teams, just getting coffee massages, going off site to have, a meeting that is off site somewhere different, and food's always important. Lollies, things like those types of things take away from the feeling of we're here just to have to do work in a nice environment as well. Or can we go off site? Those types of things to nurture that. And then you get to understand people, but you feel like you're not always in that same place all the time.
Thank you, Lee. And it's not only about the place, yeah, it's about getting to know them at a personal level, because at the very end of the day, I mean, we are all persons in essence, yeah. And we share that goal of education that we are passionate about. So there we are.
Perhaps this sounds basic, but maybe it's a matter of also continually revisiting the strengths so that it's always at the forefront of people's minds as we're interacting with one another.
I mean, I love that. Make sure I'm off mute. I love that, especially in those times where there are challenges or you personally are experiencing, whether it's like self-doubt or whatever, that imposter syndrome, or it's just things aren't working very well. And you have your colleagues who they're not just gassing you up, but they're just really trying to bring light to that. So then you can remind yourself, and then you can build from that. And then you feel that in those moments that then you can pass that on to your other colleagues, right? And revisiting it and adding different skills, right? As the things change and the conditions change, right? You're going to have other skills that we really want to focus on. Or we might want to bring our teammate a little bit along for, whatever it is. So we're going to focus on what they're good at so we can get that wisdom back in there because we want to re-engage them with whatever it is. So yeah, no, I think that's great.
Well, Erin, that reminds me that one of the values of just that piece of this tool is that, say, as a school leader, you're tending to the health of the team and you're conscious of whatever that list of items are that they're using to self-assess and team assess. And that as the team inevitably changes, someone retires, somebody's promoted, somebody takes long service leave, whatever it might be, it's not just a matter of a set of qualifications. Oh, we need another year 3 teacher with, this kind of particular background and plug them in. It's what has the team evolved into, and now what do they need? It's not the same as what they did when they did that initial assessment years before. And so we think that this is a helpful thing for people at many different scales of interaction with the team to be utilizing.
And that would help with setting up your protocols and norms at the beginning. So they have them up front and written explicit. And so anyone comes in new, they drive that drives what we're going to do and how we action things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the way of being.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, I would like to challenge Lee. Lee, you shared about norms, yeah, and I'm being very picky about it because we believe in the power of words, right? So we in our book we address this idea of sharing this type of norms, but at the same time we said, well, if we think of norms, what type of structure are we thinking of? So what would you say? What type of a structure? So who is thinking of those norms? Who is deciding those norms?
Well, it should be the group really that decides the norms, and their behaviours relate to those norms as well. That be right?
Beautiful, Lee. So that's it. So wouldn't those be some kind of agreements?
Yes, agreements, absolutely, yeah.
So this is why at the book, this is something that we share as well. Yeah. So when we think of agreements where the whole community, yeah, it may be in a classroom, a teacher, the learners, the students in the classroom, the school staff, yeah, in their community or in the teachers' meetings, whatever, yeah. Co-creating those agreements can make a big difference because everybody's going to be more responsible about, and they are going to commit more to what they say. Hey, this is what we all agreed, yeah. So, and I like to share some experiences I had with high schoolers. At the very beginning of the school year, I love to co-create those agreements with them. And one of them had to do with the use of cell phones in the classroom, a big topic. Yeah, it's been a very big topic. So it was not me who said, hey, let's ban cell phones, usage in the classroom. So all the students there shared their voices. And it was so interesting to see how every single learner had their own opinion. Some of them were like, no, cell phones in the classroom? No, Mar, you're crazy. How are we going to have them there? People use them for social media. People just get distracted. Well, the students get distracted, this and that, and they don't do what they are supposed to do. There were other students who were like, no, but they are so useful. I mean, when I'm in the English class, I'm using it for, the online dictionaries, and it helped me for this, and it helped me for that. And I use it for this as this resource or some other. So it was like, okay, so we have to come to an agreement. So what shall we do? And in the end, the agreement was, okay, so let's use cell phones responsibly for educational purposes, for learning purposes. That made a completely change, yeah. So it was like a commitment that students had. So I didn't have to say, hey, let's ban them or not. Now there are policies in different countries, yeah. Even in my country, the policy has changed, but still, co-creating those agreements in the end guide and move the whole community to become more responsible in that sense, right? Okay. Mel, I think that you'd like to share something. You have your hand raised, very politely waiting. Luckily, it's a virtual hand, so you don't have to be waiting.
It is a virtual hand. I actually had a question for the three of you. So, many times when new leaders enter or begin trying to create new teams, members of those teams have already had experiences with one another. And sometimes they haven't been the most trust-filled communities. So when you're trying to co-create those agreements, how do you make sure that you start with a clean slate for everyone, and that you're not trying to react to past experience in a negative light?
Nick, Karen, would you like to go for it? Or I can see Nick is trying to find the button to unmute himself, yeah?
Yes, I'm unmuted. No, I was going to say, Mar, it sounds like an elephant in the room item. And it is one of the things that we address in the book is how do you, well, what did you say, Aaron, flow with the challenges, right? Rather than, certainly don't ignore them, but acknowledge that things come up, and that if we can have a solid set of communication protocols in place, we can work through those. But that's my simple introduction, and then, but I'd love to hear from Aaron or Mara about that.
It's such a complex issue, right? Because you're a new leader, right? In this scenario, you're a new leader, you're coming in, you have to get to know what's been even, that institutional knowledge, that historical knowledge of the group and how they work together and what are the dynamics. And those dynamics might not be so great, right? And so you're the new thing, right? That's hopefully going to be kind of that fuse that can help to mend some of those relationships. But you have to do it in a way that works for the group, right? So it's, addressing it. Oh, my light, not the light.
Erin, that's wonderful. Making
Technology.
magic. Yeah.
Yeah, duh. Uh, but you have to be able to do it in a way where you build those trusting relationships so they'll share with you. And I think that understanding and having those experiences where you can have those conversations, but then also really understanding where that bias, we talk a lot about bias and that implicit bias that exists, and a framework for really working through your own bias, but then understanding the group bias and understanding kind of the individuals and how they feel and how they trust another teammate is really important. And so it is having that ability to come in and build those trusting relationships, but then also be able to acknowledge and to be able to mend it in ways of moving forward, while also knowing that those are inevitably going to create hiccups along the way, but allowing for kind of that equity in how you are that new force in treating the team and the individuals. It's easier said than done, but I think that that's the way that you have to really approach that, especially with even the most toxic of teams. And if that team has to stay together, then you work with what you have and you work with the history behind it. Yeah. Oh, that's tough. But those agreements, right? I mean, they do come into play because you take that accountability, even if I am not getting along with anyone at this table, right? Like you're going to take that accountability, and you can hold yourself accountable as long as everybody else is held accountable for those agreements that you've co-created in that moment moving forward. And then we build from there. We see what happens.
Yes, and Erin, apart from that accountability, I would say that whenever there's a change in the system of the team, we need to be aware, yeah, that some things will need to change. Yeah, so first, we may have a team of educators who have their own agreements co-created, of course. Then there may be another, a new school leader or another educator who is joining in, or another who is leaving. Those agreements have to be revisited in some way, and they should be visible for the whole community. It's like, hey, they are there. They shouldn't be like the hidden agenda, like, okay, what's going on here? And then you have to walk into the classrooms, go around the school and seeing what's the hidden agenda here. Yeah, what are those agreements that are not written anywhere, but I can feel them, or I have this intuition that it seems that it works like this. But whenever there's a change in the system, we have to revisit, that. I'm thinking of an example. related to it, yeah, but in a different way. When during the pandemic, when I was in a school working with educators, yeah, supporting some educators, and in the ESL program. And it was really interesting because we had started the year in person, of course, and we had co-created our agreements with the classrooms, you know, and the different class groups. But then when we immediately had to turn into the virtual world, guess what? The first thing we did was to revisit those agreements because they may be different in the virtual space. How we were going to communicate in that space. Yeah, how are we going to collaborate in that space? How are we going to show respect while we are in this space? Yeah, there were some learners who were just painting through the screens and everything was like, wow, what's going on? Yeah, so that was part of the first thing we did was co-create those and revisit those agreements we had in person and took them, you know, because there had been a change in the system. In this case, was the space where learning was taking place, right? So we hope, Mel, that answered your question in some way. Great. Okay, and maybe because we are getting to the end of this session, yeah, we may want to share just a few things that we want to share with you all. Let me go back to our presentation. All right, just a sec here. Okay, and after that, we have a very important announcement to share with you. We are so proud and so excited about it. Nick, would you like
Very
to
excited.
share? Yeah.
Yes. So we mentioned that we've been working on this book for 5.5 years, and at about midday today in Bozeman, Montana, we received word that the book was being released, and sure enough, there's a QR code to prove it. And there may be some details. For example, we're pretty sure it can be printed and distributed in Australia, but if anything comes up, we can certainly follow through on that. But the other thing is seeing the title page there is a reminder that though we've been talking about teaching as teams, that this is really could be for teams of young people who are working on a project, or a community that's trying to work through a challenge. And so though we devote the majority of the book to the relevance of this work to a school setting, we really think it has the potential of impacting people in many aspects of their life. The other thing that you'll see on the screen there is that we were fortunate to have a foreword written by Dr. Daniel Wilson. He's at Project Zero at Harvard Graduate School of Education. And he and I have worked together for more than a dozen years, I suppose. And so his observations were really helpful to us in affirming that we were on the right track when he stepped up and wrote that. But the other thing is that several years ago, he told us, you know what you really need to do is pull in a graphic designer that will help create some continuity to all of these things that you're exploring. And so Tegan Scopper has stepped into that role, and we'll actually go out and have a nice meal with her, all four of us together tonight, and acknowledge this collaboration that we've been investing so much of our lives in. Was a very emotional moment, the whole range of emotions today. And we're really quite pleased that you've been willing to come hear this and make your own contributions. As Mar mentioned, the book is full of many other voices, and we really hope that you'll add your voice to this story as well. Thank you all for spending this time with us.
Congratulations. But I'd like to say that we can't buy it. I've just gone on there then, and I can't do it to Australia. Not the United States.
Not in Australia. Okay.
Well,
only the US. It's only allowing me to do the US.
All right, I'll make an adjustment and see if we can overcome that. because
No worries, thank you.
we have many Australian
Yeah, we have a
contacts.
lot.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Thank
do.
you.
That needs to be fixed.
Gosh, well, we are just a little bit past the top of the hour. So before we leave tonight, if you're not a member of the What School Could Be online community, this is your invitation to roll up your sleeves, link arms with some of the best, most passionate educators we know. I believe Nick and Mar are definitely in the community. Erin, I'm not sure if
Yeah.
you are, but I hope you are.
I
And,
am.
awesome. So that's actually another place where you might be able to interact with these wonderful educators and authors. So again, the website to join us is community.whatschoolcouldbe.org. And I just want to end by saying thank you so much, Nick, Mar, Erin, for spending this very special time with us tonight. And we're so grateful that we've been able to just do a little bit of celebration with you, which is, you've had quite a labor of love over the past many years with this book. So how nice that it came to fruition and it happened on this night. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Nice
very
to
much.
meet you.
Can't
Bye.
wait to read the book and share it.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes.